Yup. So this week we're going to be learning the second parsha of Kriyas Shema. V'hoyoim Shemoya. Last week we learned the first parsha of Kriyas Shema. In the second parsha of Kriyas Shema, we have the pasuk V'lemadatem oisam es beneichem ledaber bom. Where Chazal say that the pasuk in the first parsha, "V'shinantam livanecha," is not talking about teaching Torah to your children. It's talking about teaching Torah to talmidim. Banecha elu talmidim. But the pasuk in this week's parsha, "V'lemadatem oisam es b'neichem," is talking about teaching your biological children Torah. Now, pashtus, it's a chiyuv doiraisa, and let me spell it out. The Rambam in Perik Aleph Mihilchis Talmud Torah Halacha Aleph says Noshim va'avodim uktanim pturim mitalmud Torah. Yeah, Avol koton oviv chayav lelamdoi Torah shenemar v'lemadatem oisam as b'neichem ledaber bo. In other words, in spite of the fact that the cotton himself is potur mitalmud Torah, but his father is obliged to teach him Torah. Shenemar v'lemadatem oisam as b'neichem ve'eno isha chayeves lelamed es beno. Shekol hachayev lilmoid chayev lelamed. Only somebody that himself is mechuyev in Talmud Torah is mechuyev to teach Torah to his children. Now, this din that a father is chayev lelamed as benoi Torah appears in the Mishnah in Kiddushin. In the Mishnah says, Kol mitzvos haben al ha'av anoshim chayovim v'noshim pturos. Mitzvos that are mitzvos haben, that are the Torah put it on the av, only the av is chayev and the mother is potter. As we bring over there from a brayso, ha'av chayov bivnoi lemoiloi v'levdoisoi. A father is responsible to mal his son and to be poida him pidyon haben v'lelamdoi Torah ula hasiyoi isha ula lamdoi umnes v'yesh oimrim afla hashitoi b'mayim. So really, you see that in this general category of mitzvahs haben alav, we have also mitzvahs d'oraisa, like lemoiloi, livdoisoi, and also mitzvahs d'rabbanon, like lelamdoi umnes, and lahashitoi b'mayim, teaching him how to swim. The mother not a d'oraisa. And Mamela, it's not clear if the mitzvah of lelamed as benoi Torah is a d'oraisa, or maybe it's only a d'rabbanon. The Gemara on Daf Koftes Amid Beis in Kiddushin says lelamdoi Torah minolon. From where do we know that a father is responsible to teach his son Torah? The ksiv lemantzem oisem es beneichem. So l'chare, this is not some kind of a drasha that we can interpret as an asmachta. L'chare, it's a mikra molei dibur hakosov. I mean, l'chare, it's about the d'oraisa. The Torah says v'lemadatem oisem es beneichem ledaber bo. And so the Moshel in the Shulchan Aruch Harav in the beginning of Hilchis Talmud Torah, he writes, Afal pisha kotten potter mikol ha-mitzvahs, v'gam oviv einoi chayev lechanchoi b'mitzvahs min ha-Torah. The general chiyuv of chinuch in all mitzvahs is only a chiyuv d'rabbanon, not a d'oraisa. Avol Talmud Torah, mitzvahs ha-same min ha-Torah, al ha'av l'lamed es b'nei ha-kotten Torah. So it's clear that he understands that the mitzvah of teaching a son Torah, as opposed to the chiyuv chinuch in all other mitzvahs, the chiyuv v'lelamed es b'nei Torah is a d'oraisa. It's a straightforward pasuk, v'lemantem oisem es b'neichem, and as it also, you can see it in the Rambam, because the Rambam says, Noshim v'avodim uktanim pturim mitalmud Torah. Avol kotten oviv chayiv lelamdei Torah. The avol means, however, if the chiyuv of a father to teach his son Torah wouldn't be on the same level, on the d'oraisa level, then it wouldn't be an avol. In other words, the avol means that on that same level that the cotton is potter, and we're talking over here about the chiyuv d'oraisa, avol of chayv l'lamdei Torah. So this indicates that we're talking about a chiyuv d'oraisa. But if you look in Nozir Daf Chav Ches Amid Beis, there's a Mishnah. Ha'av madir es benoi benozir, that a father can put nazirus on his son. The ein ha'isha maderes es beno benozir. A woman cannot be madir es beno benozir. The Gemara says ish in isha loy, my time. Why is it that only a father can make his son into a nazir and a mother can't? So the Gemara says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, in the name of Rish Lakish, Kedei Lechanchoi b'mitzvahs, that the reason that a father could make his son into a nazir is Kedei Lechanchoi b'mitzvahs. Frag the Gemara, Hachi afilu isha nami. So why can't a mother? Kosavar ish chayev lechanech benoi b'mitzvahs ve'ein ha'isha chayeves lechanech es beno. That chinuch is only on the father and not on the mother. Now, if you look in the Ayin Mishpat, who references the Rambams, the Ayin Mishpat and the Ner Mitzvah. The Ner Mitzvah references the Sifrei HaMitzvahs like the Smag, and the Ayin Mishpat is the Ein Mishpat references the Rambams and the Shulchan Aruchs. So he over there references all the Rambams that talk about Chinuch, and Hilchis Tzitzis, and Hilchis Tefillin, and Hilchis Lulav, etc., etc. He has a list, I think, of 9 different places where the Chiyuv Chinuch appears in the Rambam. On that Gemara of but amongst those sources, he also has Hilchis Talmud Torah Perik Aleph Alach Aleph, which is the Rambam that we just said, that cotton, aval cotton, aviv chayv l'lam the Torah. How in the world does this have to do with what the Gemara is saying? Ha'av chayv l'chanech es b'nei mitzvahs. L'chora the chiyuv of l'lamed es b'nei Torah is a dairaisa. Has nothing to do with the chiyuv chinuch in all other mitzvahs that are d'Rabbanan. So it would seem that the Ayin Mishpat, Rabbi Yeshua Boyaz, who actually died, at the age of 27. He was an Italian gadol. And so that the Ayin Mishpat understood that the Gemara in the Brais in Kiddushin, L'mad Ma'aseh es b'neichem, Ha'av chayv l'lamed es b'nei Torah, is just an asmachta. But there is no chiyuv minat Torah to teach your son Torah. And the chiyuv to teach your son Torah is chinuch, just like in lulav and in tzitzis. But it's kind of surprising. I mean, how is this? This is an asmachta. It's a shteit in the Torah. V'lamadetem ma'aseh es b'neichem. But it would seem like Rabbi Yeshua Boyaz, like the Ayin Mishpat, from the Braise in Sukkah Daf Mem Beis. It says in Sukkah Daf Mem Beis Amid Aleph, Tana Rabbanan, Kotten hayoideya l'na'aneya chayev belulav. A cotton that knows how to shake the lulav, to make the na'anuim, his father is mechuyev to be mechanachim in lulav. Le'is atev chayev b'tzitzis. He knows how to wrap the talis around his body. He's chayev b'tzitzis. Lishmor tefilov. He knows how to be shoymer as tefilov. Aviv loikach loik tefillin. Yoidei ledaber. Aviv loimdei Torah ukriyas shema, etc. So we see that the Braisa is mentioning teaching your son Torah together with tzitzis and film and lulav. It would seem to tell us that this is also a chiyuv d'Rabbanan of chinuch. The Ran in Sukkah, in the end of Perek Hayoshon, on page Yud Gimel Amid Beis, in the pages of the Rif, he says, B'zeh Loshen, v'chol kotten she'egiya l'chinuch, chayev midrabbanan. This is the Shita of Rishonim, that the chiyuv chinuch is not just mutal, is not only on the father, but the kotten himself is mechuyev b'chinuch. In any case, v'chol kotten she'egiya l'chinuch, chayev midrabbanan. Ve'ein ha'chinuch shove b'chol mokim. The age is not the same in all mitzvahs. Elo kol chad v'chad lefi in yornoi. The hoche talinin be'ein tzorech le'imoy. As far as sukkah is concerned, we say that it depends on whether or not he still needs his mother. V'gabi re'iyah, v'gabi being oila regel, v'yochel alois, v'chulei, v'gabi lulav, v'yoidei l'na'aneya, v'gabi tzitzis, v'yoidei l'satif, v'gabi Torah, v'yoidei l'daber, k'dizim b'sei perik lulav ha'gozel. So you see that he's clearly bringing the yoidei l'daber as the shear of higia l'chinuch in the chiyuv chinuch d'Rabbanan. As shocking as that sounds. Now, there's in the back of the Rambam, they have Hagois Arba Turei Oven. He was a Rav in Amsterdam hundreds of years ago. Anyway, in the Hagoyes Arba Turi Yoven, he taka says that from the Braise in Sukkah, it's muchach that even though the pashtus of the Lashon Rambam is that the chiyuv to teach a son Torah is the Raisa, but he says that you see from the Braise that it's only the Rabbanon. And that's, as we're showing from the Ran. However, it's the Chapella. I mean, how's it shaykh? I mean, that V'lamatim is B'nechem. It's a Mefurish Pasuk. I mean, could it be that Lo Sirtzach is a Rabbanon? I mean, it says Lo Sirtzach. It probably means what it says. Yeah, so it says V'lamatim is B'nechem. L'daber bom. How is that a Rabbanon? And also the Rambam, the way he says it, Avol Kotten Oviv Chayv L'Lamdei Torah is Avada Mashma, that it's on the same level as the Noshim Avodim Muktanim Pturim Mitalmud Torah, which is Midorais. Anyway, so we maybe can suggest that in the mitzvah of teaching a son Torah, there are two things. There's also a Doraisa, which is explicit in the pasuk of L'Mantem Oisem Es B'nechem, but there's also a chiyuv chinuch in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah midrabanan. In other words, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is no less than the mitzvah of lulav. Just like a father's mechuyev to be mechanech es benoi belulav, he's also mechuyev midrabanan, the mechanech es benoi b'Talmud Torah, besides for the doiraisa of l'matem oisem es benechem. But you can ask me, I mean, why the rabbanan need to tag on a chiyuv chinuch if the father anyway is mechuyev to teach his son Torah midoiraisa? So I want to say like this: l'chayre, it's pashut that the mitzvah of teaching your son Torah, is not about making my son do the mitzvah. In other words, when we're talking about lulav, the mitzvah is to see to it that my son should do the mitzvah's lulav. But the mitzvah of teaching my son Torah, I want to say, is not that I should cause him to do the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The mitzvah of teaching my son Torah is to give him Torah knowledge, to teach him Torah. In other words, it's not about making him do the mitzvah, but it's about teaching him the Torah. And Mamela, I want to say like this: L'chora, when the son is only a Yodea L'daber. Now, when does it happen? Is the Yodea L'daber before the Yodea L'hovin or after the Yodea L'hovin? I think that usually, even in adults, sometimes they talk without understanding, but in children, for sure, the Yodea L'hovin comes after the Yodea L'daber. I mean, children have the ability to talk before they have the ability of understanding a concept. And therefore, when we say that a Kotna Yodea L'daber Oviv Melamdei Torah, so he's really not, the father's really not being Mekayim the Doiraisa of L'Madtem Oisem Es B'nechem yet, because the son is not capable of understanding the concepts of Torah. So what is it about? This is where the Rabbanan comes to play. That just like the Rabbanan said, that when my son can shake a lulav, I should get him to shake a lulav. So also the Rabbanan said that when my son could do the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, I should cause him to do the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And why is he doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah? This is based on what the Shulchan Aruch Harav says in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Perek Beis, Sif Yud Gimel, that in spite of the fact that the Magen Avraham says in Siman Nun in Orach Chaim that learning Torah without understanding you have no mitzvah bechlal, says the Shulchan Aruch Harav that's only true in Torah Shebal Peh. But in Torah Shebiksav, if you say psukim, you're mekayim the mitzvahs Talmud Torah, even if you don't understand what you're saying. So lefizeh, if my son is on the level that he doesn't yet understand, but he can talk, so midai raisa, I have no chiyuv to teach him Torah because he's not yet capable of understanding. But on the other hand, I could cause him to be mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, because the mitzvah of Talmud Torah in Torah Shebechsav, he's mekayim with talking. And Memela Mishiyoidea Ledaber is a shear of Hagol Lechinuch, as if it's stated in the Ran. And Memela, it's not a steer with the fact that V'lematem Oisem Es B'nechem is a mitzvah d'oraisa. The ha'av chayiv l'lamed b'nai Torah that appears in the Masechtas Kiddushin, and we bring the pasuk v'lamatzim ma'asim es b'neichem is avada d'oraisa. But nevertheless, there's also a rabbinic chiyuv chinuch in being mechanech a son in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, just like there's a chiyuv to be mechanech him in the mitzvah of lulav, and that is what happens when he's yoidea ledaber. Oh, but the it's not shaykh to say this in the Shittas Rambam, because the Rambam he begins with avol, cotton, oviv, chayev, lelamdoi Torah, and he brings the pasuk of l'matzim moisim es b'neichem ledaber bom. And further on in Halacha Vav, the Rambam says, Me'ei Mosai, Oviv Chayiv L'Lamdei Torah, Mishiyaschel Ledaber, Oviv L'Lamdei Torah. No. So this Me'ei Mosai is going back to Halacha Aleph, obviously. Now he's spelling it out. I mean, he said in Halacha Aleph that a father is mechuyev to teach his son Torah, and now he's telling us when that begins. So it's l'chora clear that, so you can't say what I'm saying, because I'm saying that Mishayaskil Ledaber and the Chiyuv D'Oraisa are two different things. And the Rambam started off with the L'matzim Ma'asim B'neichem, and now he's telling us when does that begin? And the Rambam is mashma klor that the mitzvah D'Oraisa begins Mishayoidea Ledaber. I mean, what I'm saying is sayable in the Ram, but in the Rambam l'chora it's not Yetochen. However, in the Rambam Ksav Yad that's brought in the Frankel edition, it says B'zeh HaLoshen, Me'ei Masai, in Halacha Vav, Me'ei Masai Maschil Oviv L'Lamdei Torah. L'chora, it should have said like in our Rambams, Me'ei Masai Chayv L'Lamdei Torah. What do you mean Me'ei Masai Maschil Oviv L'Lamdei Torah? Me'ei Masai Chayv L'Lamdei Torah. So I want to say, Faked, that it's Takamashma, that the Chayv L'Lamdei of the beginning of the Perik, you don't have yet when he's Yodea only Ledaber. Here the Rambam saying something new. The maskil is really not the halacha of L'matzim Ma'asim es b'neichem. This is be'emes the din of chinuch. You know, maskil. If you look in Rashi, in Parshas Kiseitze, on the pasuk of Mi ho'ish asher bona bayis v'loi chanochoi, Zogt Rashi, what's v'loi chanochoi, what's a chinuch habayis, v'loi dorboy. Chinuch loshen haschol. So I say that's when the Rambam says, Me'emasai maschil oviv l'lamdei Torah. In other words, when does he start to be mechanechim? That's spam is mishum maschil ledaber. But this is not really the time that the mitzvah of ha'av chayiv l'lamed es b'noi Torah that the Rambam in Halacha Aleph said from the pasuk of l'matzim moisam es b'neichem. Oh, but really, I mean, it's kind of mechudish to say that the Rambam in Halacha Vav is not connected to the Halacha Aleph, and then he never gave us like the shir for Halacha Aleph. He only tells us that you should start with the chinuch, mishimaskal ledaber, and he left us hanging as far as well, maybe he understood that when you're there lahavin, you'll figure it out. But the thing is, the Rambam never spelled it out. And especially that according to the Nusach in the Sifrei HaRambam Shelefonenu, where it doesn't say Me'emasai Maschil, steht doch Me'emasai Chayiv L'Lamdoi, it's clear that it goes back to the beginning of the Perik. And Mamela, we have really a problem over here, because even if we'll say, like it's the Shulchan Aruch Harav says, that Mishamaschil, that with Dibur Alein, you mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. But how can it be that you already have the mitzvah of teaching your son Torah at that point? True, the son is going to be doing Torah, doing Talmud Torah, but that's called teaching my son Torah. I mean, teaching my son Torah means I teach him ideas, concepts that he grasps intellectually. I mean, does it mean that how do I have that mitzvah when he's just Yodea Ledaber? But, you know, if we're going to say that the Yodea Ledaber is really a shir in the mitzvah Semi Daraisa, it's going to be muchach, that the chiyuv of L'lamed is b'nai Torah is not like I understood. It's really to make my son accustomed to doing the Maisa mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Al derech the choivas hachinuch that the Rabbanon made in other mitzvahs. Could be that the chiyuv the Rabbanon in all mitzvahs is really modeled after the chiyuv of the L'matzim Ma'asim es b'neichem. I mean, the Rabbanon's chiyuv chinuch in all mitzvahs is geboit on the so-called chiyuv chinuch that the Torah gave. in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And be'emes, if you look at the pasuk, that's really the pshat of the Kro. It says, "V'lamaditem oisam es benechem ledaber bam." So we're not talking about teaching my son concepts, but it means I should make him accustomed to talking Torah. V'lamaditem oisam es benechem ledaber bam. You know, if you look at the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, according to Rabbi Yoshia, we learn from what it says in the Parsha Rishon of Kriya Shema al levavecha v'dibarta bom, that Kriya Shema needs also kavana and also Kriya al levavecha v'dibarta bom. Then we say that the Parsha Shniya, kavana, according to Rabbi Yoshia, is genuk. You don't have to have Kriya. Frag the Gemara, Umayshno, ad kan mitzvahs Kriya v'kavana, the Ksiv in the first Parsha, al levavecha v'dibarta bom. Hosam Nami in the second parasha state al levavchem ledaber bam. Yeah, so what's the difference? Answers the Gemara, who b'divrei Torah ksiv v'hachikam. When it says in the second parasha al levavchem ledaber bam, it's talking about the Torah. V'hachikam rachmana agmiru b'naichu Torah ki heichi deligresu behu. Teach your child Torah in order that they should be goris, meaning they should talk Torah. So, you see, the mitzvah is not to teach him concepts. The mitzvah is to get him into the route of talking divrei Torah. In other words, it's not the mitzvah that's happening when I'm teaching him. It's really, I'm teaching him in order that he should become a medaber bam. In other words, so this is really training him in doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, just like we have in the Drabbanans in all mitzvahs, training him to shake a lulav, training him to wear tzitzis, and the mela, it's taka. So the mitzvah is really the same type of mitzvah like chinuch, like the Lashon Rashi about chinuch in Chagiga Davav. Rashi says, "Halo ein chinuch kotten elo lahanhigoi." That's the function of chinuch d'Rabbanan in all mitzvahs, and it would seem that that's really the v'lamaditem oisam es benechem ledaber bam, that it's breaking him in, training him to start talking Torah, and which he will do l'ksheyagdil. So that's the mitzvah. Say there, Isa Mamela, we're saying that it's shaykh already. That it's shaykh already by the Yodel Ledaber. Now the thing is like this: according to this, it could really be that in spite of the fact that the Lamed is Bnei Torah is really a Doraisa, and all the other things that the Braisa in Sukkah is mentioning are the Chiyuv Chinuch is only midrabanan, Yodel Lesatif, Yodel Nanea, but nevertheless the Braisa brings them all under one category, because we're talking over here about the shiurim, that from that point on, the son will become ragil in the mitzvah. In other words, he has to be on a certain level that he should be able to become from this point and on ragil in the mitzvah of loliv, ragil in the mitzvah of tzitzis. And memela, we also have to have the age when a son is able to become a ragil in the ledaber bam of Talmud Torah. And Memela, the Brisa brings it together. Even though the Ledaber Bam, the mitzvah of Lelamed as Bnei Torah is Doraisa, this is only the Rabban. And we don't have to say like the Ran, that the Brisa is really talking about Chinuch LeTalmud Torah midrabanan, but it's Taka Midoraisa. Taka Midoraisa. Now, you know, if you look at the Sifri, on the Pasuk, V'lemaditem oisam es b'nechem Ledaber Bam, it says like this. A fascinating Sifri. Mikan Amru, Kishatinik Maschil Ledaber, Oviv Medaber Imoy Loshoin HaKodesh Umalamdei Torah. No. Rashi brings it in the Chumash if you don't want to look up the Sifri. Now, l'chor it's a pella. I mean, V'lemaditem oisam is clearly going on what it said before. In other words, Ledaber Bam is talking about the Dvorai Eila. V'hoyu Dvorai Eila. Asher Anechi Mitzavcha Hayoyim. The Dvorai Eila is Divrei Torah. Yeah, so it could be Kriya Shema according to one another. It could be Divrei Torah. But how in the world does it say over here a mitzvah that a father should teach his son l'daber b'loshen hakodesh? In Kriyash Magufa, you could be Yoitza b'chol loshen shat shemeh, we paskin. And Avad it's so in Talmud Torah. So where is this coming from that you should teach him l'daber b'loshen hakodesh? Okay, so I don't want to really, put you through the whole thing. I'm just going to tell you, Bekitza Nimrods, Bekitza Nimrods. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Yud Gimel has a Iboya, if Kol HaTorah Kula B'Loshen HaKodesh Nemra, Oy B'Chol Loshoin Nemra. No, and the Gemara wants to be titled in the Machlokes of Rebbe and the Rabbanim, but it's not clear. What in the world are we talking about? Is it a historical question? Is it a theological question? It's a halachic question. I mean, Kol HaTorah Kula B'Loshoin HaKodesh Nemra B'Chol Loshen Nemra. I mean, what is it about? So Rashi says that it's le'inyan likrois b'Torah. Linear licorice b'Torah. It's not clear. What do you mean linear licorice b'Torah? Taisa says Kriyas HaTorah is Takonas Ezra, and we're darshaning over here a pasuk. V'hoyu b'avyosin if Kol HaTorah is b'loshen hakodesh nemra b'choloshen nemra. How could it be that we're darshaning a pasuk where the nafkamina lahalocha only plays out in a Takonas Ezra, which is not midoraisa, it's Kriyas HaTorah b'tzibur. But Mistama, see, Rashi in Brachas just says likrois b'Torah. Rashi in Soita says likrois b'tzibur. But probably the yesod is that the nemra of Torah is really the issue. The issue at hand is whether the shame Torah shebechsav that psukim have is that in psukim as said in every language, or is it only in psukim as said in the original Lashon HaKodesh? That's the question of Kol HaTorah, b'Loshen HaKodesh Nemra, or b'Chol Loshen Nemra. It plays out, Rashi Taka says, now that we have a Takonis Ezra to link Kriyas HaTorah b'Tzibur, and you're supposed to link Torah Shebechsav. So, could you be Mekayim it b'Shar Loshen? But in principle, the question is not just Negeya, Legabe the Takonis Ezra. In principle, it's Negeya if you learn Torah shebechsav b'shar loshen, are you being koirei Torah shebechsav, or are you not being koirei Torah shebechsav? Where would this play out? I say that according to the Shulchan Aruch Harav, that says that in Torah shebechsav you mekayim even without havana, and in Torah shebal peh you need to have havana. The question is, if you say psukim of Torah shebechsav b'shar loshen, if it carries the shame, Torah shebechsav b'chol loshen, so then even if you don't understand, so you're mekayim the mitzvah of limud HaTorah, whereas if you don't understand, you're not mekayim. Now you know that Tosfos says, it's mavur from Tosfos in Sotah Daf Lamed Gimel, that even in mitzvahs that require loshen kodesh, there's a mishnah over the elu nemar and b'chol loshen, and there's mitzvahs that are nemar only b'loshen hakodesh. Tosfos says that it has to be bilshoinom, which means that if a person that, just like a Frenchman, if he says something that's nemar b'chol loshen in Chinese, he's not mekayim. So also in Lashon HaKodesh, if Lashon HaKodesh is not your language, you're not mekayim the mitzvah. The poskim is saying not like this Tosfos. There's a Hagoras Reb Lozer Lando that's printed in the back. Reb Lozer Lando, was an Einikel of the Noda B'Yehuda. He wrote a sefer, Yad HaMelech, but in the back of the Gemara, there's a long Hagor from Reb Lozer Lando that the Mishnah Berurah brings in the Bir Halacha that really goes against the Tosfos. But Tosfos says that even in Lashon HaKodesh, if you don't understand what you're saying, if it's not your language, if it's not your language, you can't be Mekayim the mitzvah. And Mamela, I want to say that the chiyuv of Lalamidus B'nai Torah, as we're saying, is to train my son in doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Now, how's he doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah? Because he's Yadel Adaber. And ledaber is enough to do the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, because even without understanding, if you're saying psukim of Torah Shebechsav, you're making the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. But according to Tosfos, that's only if Lashon Kodesh is my language. But if Lashon Kodesh is not my language, then I can't be Mekayim, even in the Dvarim HaNe'emorim B'Lashon HaKodesh. And Memela, if I want to be Mekayim, the V'lamaditem Oisam as V'neichem Ledaber Bom, before I teach him Torah, I have to teach him Lashon HaKodesh. Because if he doesn't know the language, he's like a Frenchman that doesn't speak Lashon HaKodesh, that's saying Kriya Shema b'Lashon HaKodesh is not Mekayim the mitzvah. So who adin, the dibur of this cotton will not be a Maisa of Talmud Torah, and therefore I'm not considered to be training him in doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, and therefore I have to be melamed him Lashon HaKodesh. Anyway, Untish Teshura, this is a long discussion, but I just say it's interesting that, we really begin to teach a son Torah when he can't yet understand. And you see that l'chayra we would say, Torah, hichach maschem ubinaschem le'enei ha'amim. Torah is all about understanding. What's the tachlis in training him in the habit of learning Torah when he doesn't understand? That means we have this question on the rabbinic level. The chinuch in all mitzvahs, and we all know that if we would start davening, we want to assume if we would start davening when we're 15, when we're 20, when we have first of all some needs, and we've experienced some difficulties, and we understand the idea of talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and we understand what the words mean. So maybe our davening, we want to talk ourselves into believing our davening would have much more meaning. But since we start davening before we're even capable of having a clue what davening is like, and we do it out of habit, so it's very hard to bring it to the next level. So why is it that the Torah and the Rabbanon, insist on creating habits? Obviously, we know that habits are the most important thing. Having the right habits is more important than understanding, because probably if we would start davening when we're 20, probably wouldn't daven. Yeah. And probably if we would start doing mitzvahs, it has to become really something that's routine and habitual. And then Avada, it's a tremendous challenge to inspire ourselves and to make it more and more meaningful as we continue to grow. But without habit, there's nothing. The yesod has to be that Mishiyoideh ledaber aviv melamdoi Torah tziva alonu Moshe b'rosh Kelos Yaakov, and a yid has to remember that's what it is. That's what it is. V'hoya Eikev tishmon. Eikev is really on the heels. The mitzvah shodom dosh ba'akevav. It's really about, dosh ba'akevav is really where the bad habits, overcome the Torah mitzvah. It's not like I want to do anything wrong, but the pshat is I'm doing it in the knife of Eikev. And L'umazeh, a person has to develop a mahalach of Eikev, b'shamram Eikev rov, that his Eikev should be in the right place. In other words, his b'derech mamela. The Eikev is the furthest from the Rosh, but l'maisa the Eikev is what moves you. The Rosh, it really is in one place. You can only move with the Eikev, and with the Eikev you move further, and then you hope that the head comes along. In any case, Rabbi Sai, I wish you all a guten Shabbos und a freilichen Tamid.